a game changer, an event, idea, or procedure that affects a significant shift in the current manner of doing or thinking about something. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Game Changer Podcast. Join me and all of my friends as we look over different topics, ideas, look over different events, popular subjects, not so much popular subjects, even random ideas that you probably wouldn't even think about. As we dive into these things, give our perspectives as well as give our opinions about these perspectives, we give you guys something a little bit more to think about. Why? Because we believe in changing the game. Why? Simple. Because we can. Welcome to the Game Changer Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Strap yourselves in. It's going to be a wild and crazy ride. You're listening to Pro Talk Wrestling with NateFNGreat. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of Pro Talk Wrestling, of course, here on Spreaker.com. I am NateFNGreat, your host of this Pro Talk Wrestling edition of the Game Changer Podcast, talking about wrestling throughout the week and giving my opinions because why the hell not? So, this week for WWE, they had a bit of a lackluster week to say the least. AEW unveiled a new championship belt as well as put on a hell of an event for the past weekend. And guys, NXT is shaping up to be absolutely insane because we have NXT TakeOver 25 this weekend, and also we have a lot to discuss when it comes to a recent interview on Talk is Jericho because of one Jon Moxley. Let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. So, talking about Raw and SmackDown, you guys, we didn't really miss out on much. This was just one of those situations where AEW put on the better show, and Raw and SmackDown just showed that they just did not care at all. We had Kofi Kingston battling against Kevin Owens, where Kofi won. The main issue with this week was Brock Lesnar. Now, there are a few reasons as to why. There are some people that thought he was entertaining this week, but ultimately we saw just an absolute waste of time, at least an hour's worth of time wasted on this segment. Okay, so it kicked off on Raw with not Brock Lesnar, actually. I think it was Seth Rollins, actually. I think Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston, they both came out because they wanted to know who was Brock Lesnar cashing in on for his Money in the Bank opportunity. Brock Lesnar, he came out to a very weird remixed version of his theme music. His Money in the Bank briefcase had like a boombox deal to it. So he's coming out, he's just chucking and jiving, he's dancing like crazy, he's looking like he's an idiot. Just annoyed the hell out of me. We see this, and they basically made it seem like, oh, he was going to, but we're going to have to wait, you're going to have to wait. And it all ultimately ended up for nothing because Brock Lesnar found out, oh, I can cash in over the next year, I don't have to cash in right now. Well, okay then. Just so stupid. I am frustrated about this because, yes, it created for a shocking moment at Money in the Bank for Brock Lesnar to win the briefcase. A lot of people were mad about it. Some people were legitimately shocked about it, and very fewer were very happy about it. So it's just one of those situations where now they're just prolonging the fact that he is Money in the Bank winner, and now it's like, oh, me, Brock Lesnar, me have no brain. Oh, I cash in tonight. Oh, I have whole year. Oh, I wait then. I make you people wait. It was just so stupid. I hated every single bit of it, and now we have to deal with the fact that we have a beast looming in the shadows with a Money in the Bank briefcase which he can cash in on anytime he wants to. It's just really frustrating, and I'm just hoping to God that the rumors are not true about having Goldberg and Brock Lesnar face against each other title for title with the Universal title and the WWE title on the line, because it makes no sense. It really does. And so many people are going to blame, well, the ratings are low, so therefore The reason why is because these champions are not doing it. Because you're putting them in stupid storylines. You're not doing anything with them. You're just deciding, oh, hey, we're going to throw you in this one. Try to make this work even though there's no way. Creative is just absolutely stifling. And it all boils down to Vince and Kennedy McMahon. It really does. Because while everybody else, yeah, they might be able to get away with some of these, it all boils down to what Vince wants. And he wants it to be entertaining. He wants it to be something that it's like, oh, it's funny, damn it. This is so funny. This fits your character. This just absolutely will work for you. And it's going to help you get over. You sense the seam here? It's going to really come into play when we talk about the Jon Moxley interview. I can promise you that. As far as Raw went, we've announced the number one contender for the Universal title at Super Showdown, in which it would be Baron Corbin, who won a 4-way elimination matchup, which ultimately was not even an elimination match. It was so stupid because it was Baron Corbin. I'm trying to remember who else was in that. We had Braun Strowman, Bobby Lashley, and The Miz. That's right. All four of these guys had a really good matchup, but the finish was so stupid. They had Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley fighting to the crowd, so therefore I guess they were eliminated. Baron Corbin pins The Miz for the 1-2-3. That was it. They should not have made it elimination style. They should have just done it like a regular Fatal 4-Way, and then that's how it ended. If it was that way, I would not be as pissed. But since it was an elimination style, there were so many questions that were in my head. As how are they eliminated when there's no DQ or countouts? How are Lashley and Braun out of this matchup again? They never explain it. They just decide, oh, well, it's just down between Miz and Corbin. Oh, okay, Corbin wins. Great. Just great. And also, it's kind of weird because Baron Corbin took AJ Styles' place, and he talks about an injury that he had that Baron Corbin aggravated, it seemed like. I think, thankfully, there's not going to be any surgery needed, but it seems like it's going to be something that's going to be in place of the storyline between Baron Corbin and AJ Styles in the future. So we'll see what happens with that. It's going to be very interesting to see how well this storyline plays out. I'm looking forward to it. I like AJ Styles. I kind of like where they're going with Baron Corbin, but at the same time, let's just not have him do something stupid with his storyline. God, that would just be dumb. It's like putting a pooper scooper line in a promo. So we also got an incredible matchup, actually, between Cesaro and Ricochet. These two guys had a rematch from their match last week where Cesaro won. In this matchup, though, we had Ricochet and Cesaro just killing it. I mean, so many great spots where, like, Ricochet was going for a leap. He got caught with an uppercut. Ricochet was able to counter so many of Cesaro's moves, such as the neutralizer. The finish was kind of a surprise, actually, because Ricochet did a kind of like almost a reverse modified Hurricane Rana onto Cesaro, and he pinned him that way with the Hurricane Rana. And honestly, it was a surprise victory, but it was also one of those things where it's like, okay, not all these matches are ending with the finisher, but the match itself, it was really good. It was beyond passable. It was amazing. So hopefully we get to see more of these two battling against each other more often. So now we also have to talk about the 24-hour championship title. R-Truth is still the longest reigning champion in this entirety of its 1 week creation. R-Truth came to Raw. He's basically hiding from all the stars. He does this deal where he has Carmella, I guess, ride on him, and just they do this deal where they hide. Everybody's looking. I want to say this, that I'm hoping one of the champions in this 24/7 deal is Drake Maverick. I really, really hope that he is one of those people, because it would just be so funny just to see that. The way that he's been just put on here, it's just hilarious. He's doing these like wanted posters. He's putting them up all over the place. He's trying to figure out where R-Truth is. Then there's a deal where R-Truth hides in a photo booth. All the stars are running towards, including, I believe it was Arya Daivari and Noam Dar. They came on to Raw. They're looking for him. Then R-Truth runs into Drake Maverick. Drake Maverick finds him, chases after him. R-Truth is able to get away. Then we go to SmackDown. We bleed that into there. And R-Truth actually interrupts the Shane McMahon Appreciation Night, which was going oh so horribly. So it was one of those situations where it's like, okay, they're kind of doing this as a way to just, I guess, I wouldn't say introduce the match. I guess just kind of break this stupidity out of its cycle. So we had this, and Drew McIntyre and Elias beat down on R-Truth, and Elias pins the champion, R-Truth, to become the new champion. So Elias is now a former champion. Very nice, very nice. I mean, I wish I would have loved to have seen him win the Intercontinental title first, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, Elias has a championship win. That's cool. So Shane McMahon decides, hey, I'm going to basically postpone this stipulation for the 24-hour title until after your tag match. It's R-Truth and Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre and Elias. Pretty good matchup, but we see Roman Reigns pick up the victory, beating Elias for the win, basically one-upping Shane McMahon everywhere he goes. But then Roman Reigns decides, you know what, I'm going to do a just giant middle finger to Shane McMahon. Spears Elias, grabs R-Truth, and puts him on top of Elias for the 1-2-3. R-Truth is now the first ever two-time 24/7 champion. So, in a matter of one night, we had 2 title changes on a SmackDown. And I will say this, that R-Truth, this is only the second time that he has pulled this off, because if you remember, he actually pinned Wade Barrett a few years ago. He won the title from him, quote unquote, and then he hands it off to Dean Ambrose and just made this joke of like 2 title changes in one night. I love this company. It's just so funny how they did that. I love what they're doing with the 24/7 title. I love what they're doing with everything they're doing with this championship. It sounds really dumb, but it's one of the chaotic deals that's making WWE bearable. Because even though you could hate everything that goes on with Raw, everything that goes on with SmackDown, you're kind of interested in seeing where the 24/7 title is going to end up this week. Is it going to stay with R-Truth? Is it going to end up with another person? Is it going to end up maybe on Jinder Mahal, who actually made an appearance during this entire deal? It's kind of interesting, actually. It's just very interesting to see because, again, you have all these crazy deals and crazy antics that it just is going to be funny to see where they go with this. Now, one thing I will complain about when it comes to this is the fact that they have not introduced the 24/7 title to 205 Live, nor to NXT. I really am a bit annoyed by that, but I'm hoping that they actually do that within the next month at least, because they definitely do need to add more variety to those shows. So hopefully the 24/7 title gets added on, but we'll wait and see because, it's just WWE. They do that. We get the build-up for NXT TakeOver 25, which is this weekend. We had 3 matches that were put into the NXT show this week. We had Mia Yim defeating Bianca Belair in what was a really good matchup between these 2 women. I am looking forward to seeing where this rivalry continues. Possibly go into Mia Yim versus the NXT Women's Champion. You never know. I am very interested in seeing where this goes. They had a great promo for Tyler Breeze and Velveteen Dream building up their matchup at NXT TakeOver this week. We actually do see Velveteen Dream do like the selfie cam deal, so it's kind of interesting to see him do that, but it also kind of fits him because he is kind of in the same mold as Tyler Breeze. I am expecting that this matchup is going to kill it this weekend. We had Kushida defeating Drew Gulak in what was a really good technical matchup, and the finish was really good, to say the least. I love everything that they're doing with Kushida. I love what they're doing with Drew Gulak. I'm hoping that this is another rivalry that will continue to build up and to become something really great. We also had Candice LeRae talking to Io Shirai saying, hey, I'm going to be in your corner to neutralize the other horsewomen in your NXT Women's Tag Team Women's matchup this Sunday. I'm hoping that they don't turn Candice heel. I really am hoping that they do not do that, because that would just suck. That would really suck. Then we go into the main event, which was Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch taking on the Forgotten Sons. During this matchup, we had the Undisputed Era. They beat down on Riker, I believe is the manager's name for Forgotten Sons. He had beaten down. The Street Profits come in. They interrupt the matchup. It goes into a massive tag team chaos deal where every team gets involved. They're beating up on each other, but it isn't until Undisputed Era gets a ladder, and they beat down everybody, including a beautiful drop of the ladder onto Riker. And they have Adam Cole set up the ladder. He climbs up it, and he says, "You see this? This is exactly what it's going to be like this Sunday this Saturday at NXT TakeOver 25, with the Undisputed Era winning, and that is undisputed." So, yeah, honestly, it was a great way to end the NXT TakeOver deal, because for once we don't exactly see for the NXT title, but we actually see it for another matchup that's built up for the show. It makes sense. They want to take out the competition. They want to make sure that Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly have an advantage going into Sunday. So it's honestly really cool to see that. I'm looking forward to seeing this matchup here. I will go into predictions, but I'm going to do a quick little commercial break. Then when we come back, I will talk about NXT TakeOver 25. I'll even discuss a little bit of some AEW news, as well as go into, again, it's that time of the week again. We're talking about favorites for wrestling, building up all the way until SummerSlam. It's going to be a can't-miss deal. You definitely do not want to miss out on the 15-year anniversary, where I give you guys something you will not want to forget. So stay tuned, guys. I'll be right back. Smart Money. AJ Jensen, Chris Lockman, one of the best duos in all of Central Wisconsin. Join them as they discuss a lot of great hot topic wrestling deals, such as features in WWE, Ring of Honor, stuff in Central Wisconsin as well as the entire state of Wisconsin, AEW, New Japan, and many more. Check them out on their podcast, the Smart Money Podcast. Proud friends of the Game Changer Podcast. Alright guys, this is NateFNGreat. Welcome back to this Pro Talk Wrestling edition of the Game Changer Podcast. Let's go into predictions for NXT TakeOver 25, shall we? So, we start off with Matt Riddle taking on Roderick Strong. This matchup came about after Roderick Strong beat down on Matt Riddle, supposedly bloody, but they never really showed footage of him being mashed up and bloody. And the original bro, he wants redemption. He wants to fight against Roderick Strong, and he wants to show that he is indeed the alpha bro. As far as this matchup goes, this is kind of a bit of a toss-up, because I could see Undisputed Era going for a clean sweep this entire night. But I am going to give it to the original bro. I'm giving it to Matt Riddle. I think that after that loss to Velveteen Dream at NXT TakeOver New York, we definitely do need to see Matt Riddle get that momentum again, because I have a prediction that he is going to be going into a program with the NXT champion after this one. Up next, we have the North American Championship, Velveteen Dream defending against Tyler Breeze. I'm looking forward to this matchup. I'm looking forward to these guys just absolutely tearing it down. With that being said, I do believe that Velveteen Dream retains here tonight. I do believe that he's going to continue that reign for quite a while. I think they're going to have to find somebody else who might be up to par with Velveteen Dream. Not saying that Tyler Breeze will not be, but I do not see Tyler Breeze winning here tonight. He has been a bit of a regular coming down, and I like what they're doing with him, but at the same time, I just do not see them doing a surprise title change here. So the Dream is going to get the victory. Up next, we have the ladder match for the vacant NXT Tag Team titles, in which Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch take on the Street Profits, who take on the Undisputed Era, and they take on the Forgotten Sons. So for this one, it's going to work kind of like the Money in the Bank ladder matches, where I'm actually going to go through the most likely to win to least likely to win. Most likely to win, and my pick to win, I'm picking Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. I think that we are on the verge of seeing a new team, a new record being broken here, and that being Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly winning the NXT Tag Team titles for a third time. I just think that it's academic at this point. As far as who I think could go next, I will give that to the Street Profits. They have definitely been riding this wave of momentum ever since their matches with the Viking Raiders. I just think that they are definitely at that point, but not quite to the point that I would say that they win the matchup. Third, I will say that Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch win. I love these guys as a team. They are absolutely great together, and I'm hoping that they have so much success in the future. And of course, the final one being the Forgotten Sons. I do not see them coming out victorious here. It just is academic. Now we have the matchup for the NXT Women's Championship, Shayna Baszler versus Io Shirai. Oh, this is going to be a really tough one because I would love to see Io Shirai pick up the belt, but I see Shayna Baszler coming out victorious. Regardless, it's just the numbers game is just going to be a little bit too much for them. I think that even with Candice LeRae in her corner, that there's going to be some kind of shenanigans. There's going to be some kind of tactic that Shayna Baszler does to pick up the victory. It just seems academic at this point. Finally, we have the main event, which is for the NXT Championship. Johnny Gargano, Adam Cole, 2 title is on the line, and it might possibly be for the last time. This one, I am going with Adam Cole, baby. I think that Adam Cole is going to get his win here. He's going to get the belt, and I do think that this is going to be Johnny Gargano's swan song going up to the main roster. I truly believe that. He has done everything that he could do in the NXT realm. I think that he's definitely done everything that he can possibly do. He's put on Match of the Year, quality matches. He's had great title runs. It's just that time to finally say, Johnny, time to go. So this is the one where I see Adam Cole picking up the victory. And again, I think that it's going to make perfect sense to have Adam Cole versus Matt Riddle for a future NXT TakeOver event. So those are my predictions for NXT TakeOver 25. All right, so AEW has actually been in the news quite a bit, and it's all been stemming from the interview with Jon Moxley. Chris Jericho, his podcast Talk is Jericho, has definitely been breaking records. Even himself on Twitter, he said that this has been the most viewed, the most watched, the most downloaded episode in the entire podcast history, which says a lot because he's had great people on there like Sami Zayn, like Kevin Owens, like Edge and Paul Heyman. Which honestly, I think that Edge and Paul Heyman are my favorite people to listen to on the podcast. So overall, the podcast was very eye-opening, and it definitely does give you an idea and kind of the worries that everybody suspected with WWE. And that's mainly the fact that the creative team is so stifling. It is just so very stuck on the status quo that they really do not, they don't really go with these ideas of giving people chances. So Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose actually talks about that. He actually talks about the fact that he actually made the decision to leave in July of last year. That was when he decided that, hey, this is not what I want to do. I am good. My contract is coming up. It's time for me to, it's time for me to leave. And one of the things I do admire about Dean Ambrose is that the first thing that he says on this show is that he had nothing but respect for WWE. He had nothing but, he is grateful for everything that WWE has given him. He even mentions the fact that, it was through WWE that he found his wife. Funny enough, Renee does make a little bit of a small cameo because you'll hear in the podcast Chris Jericho just say, "Oh, hi, Renee," and she's like, "Hi," and that's about it. So it was kind of funny to hear that. But yeah, Dean definitely shows that he is grateful for that. And then he follows it up by saying, "Now that that's out of the way, let's bury WWE for 2 hours." It's just so funny to hear that. But he does talk about, again, how creatively it is just so miserable to do that. And he's worked with that company for 8 years. And he said that for about the last 6 years, he's definitely noticed that creative has just not been working with him. He talks about how there was a promo that wanted to hit him to mention the phrase pooper scooper. And he wanted to try to create this new promo that was kind of similar to what he had, but just took out the pooper scooper part, and he gets it into Vince McMahon. And there's a lot of times where he would actually go up to Vince and he would say, "Hey, why am I saying this? This is not, I'm not going to go out and say this. He even says that it's embarrassing for him to say that. And Vince McMahon always was just like, well, it's part of your character. You're unique. You're different. You relate to them. You do all these things and blah, 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 blah. But he just says, I don't feel comfortable saying, I don't want to say this. And there were so many times where, and that's usually how it goes. He goes to creative, they say if you could change it, and they'll usually say, well, this idea came from Vince McMahon. So he goes up to Vince McMahon and he says, hey, I am embarrassed. I don't want to say this. And Vince will always do like this whole deal where he's like, oh, no, this will make sense. It's funny, God damn it. It's just one of those things where you hear him just politic his way into basically make it seem like, yeah, it's a great idea, just do it. But in reality, it is literally like, well, I don't care what you say, you're going to say this line whether you like it or not. And there's even a memo that he had from one of his promos where he says, where basically he's saying that Dean Ambrose needs to say the promo verbatim, word for word, and he needs to learn. But basically, he's being told he needs to learn his place. He needs to not be so creative, just be obstructed to the creative genius that Vince McMahon obviously is. So that was kind of another one of those things where he definitely says, this is not really worth me, being here anymore. Another thing that he definitely talked about was the whole deal he had where he came back as a heel, did all those stupid promos where he was talking about how people are filthy and they're dirty and he has to wear this mask on. He's got to do these things. I mean, when he's talked about the gas mask deal, that was his idea. So he definitely wanted to keep that in there, but he thought, this whole medical mask deal was dumb. He talked about changing that to a handkerchief, which Vince McMahon agreed to, but he was just not a fan of having all of these props basically take away from the promo that he was trying to get across. And he even said, there's some of these promos that I'm looking at, I'm thinking, what the hell is the point trying to get across here? What is this trying to do? And again, Vince McMahon will politic his way into basically saying that this is a great idea. There's no way that this could be a horrible idea, and blah, 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 blah. And I will say this, that one thing that he definitely hated the fact was, again, he went back to the props deal. Once he mentioned Milwaukee, I immediately had bad flashbacks of that, because I remember that was the show that I literally shut off because I was so pissed off at what they were doing. For him, he just went and he had a doctor look at him and he gave him like rabies shots and that stupid shit. And it's one of those things where Vince McMahon's like, oh, it's genius. This is going to be a great idea. Yeah, it was a great idea to make so many women literally just salivate at the fact that, oh my God, we get to see Dean Ambrose's ass. But so many guys are just like, what the fuck is this? And Dean even said, this is more of a comedy deal. But Vince is like, no, this is not comedy at all. This is genius. This is a great idea. And again, Dean just says, no, this is going to be a comedy situation because you're looking at this and you're just thinking that, this will be something that will make things work, but people are going to look at it and it's going to seem like, this is them trying to be funny. And he knew that, and he still went through with it. But that was because he knew that he was in a situation where he couldn't win. So he also brought up the idea, everything that was going on for his recovery. He wanted to come back as a heel. He even suggested the idea of going to SmackDown and feuding with like Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles, coming back as a heel, being a bad guy, stuff like that. And they brought up the whole, the Shield is going to have like a last hurrah in Europe, so we can't just turn you heel right away. We can't just do this. So he kind of goes through this, and he says like, okay, well, can I at least come back at SummerSlam? Not sooner, but at SummerSlam. To which they're just like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. But then things change, and they decide, well, we're actually going to have you come back the week before SummerSlam. You're coming back up tonight. So it was when they said, and he's like, all right, fine, I'll do that. And he thought that there would be just such an enormous pop for it. But the problem was that this is not Seth Rollins' fault, but the fact that he had to deliver the fact that, well, you have a Scottish psychopath on your end, your corner. I'm going to have a lunatic in mind. People, they were going crazy. As soon as Dean Ambrose comes out, he's of course just like, oh, everybody's like, oh, yay, Dean Ambrose is here. This is great. But he knew that it would have created such a huge pop, huger pop than what they had before, had Seth Rollins not said anything. He could have just said, like, I got somebody in my corner or something like that. Had he not said the phrase, I'm going to have a lunatic in mind, then I think that pop would have just been bigger. And people, again, they were really great to see Dean Ambrose. He looked different. He had a different hairstyle. He had a beard on. He had a beard. It looked just absolutely amazing. And it was great to see him back. Another thing that he mentioned, the fact that WWE, Vince McMahon was one of the people that kind of wanted Dean to get heat as many ways that he could. And one of the ways that creative, unfortunately, as well as Vince McMahon thought it would be a great way to get heat, was to talk about Roman. And unfortunately, Dean was not comfortable with that. Dean was just saying the fact, this guy is battling cancer right now. Why am I doing this? But because it's going to help you get heat. It's going to help you there. It's just one of those things where Dean was just, the first one where he mentioned Roman, I think it was the Fire Pits deal, where he had the vest and he had the deal where, I can't remember what the line was, but I remember he talked about Roman, and he burned the vest, basically, after that. But there was another point where they wanted to have him mention Roman again, and it was just a despicable line from what he said. He actually said that it was a line he would not want to say on the air. I think the only person that knows is the creative member who wrote it, Vince McMahon, Dean Ambrose, and now I think only Chris Jericho knows, because he said that he would tell Jericho after the show was over what that line was that they wanted to say about Roman, and he literally said that he felt super sick about it, and he was actually pissed off about it. He actually downplayed the writer who wrote that, saying that that person should be ashamed of himself, and that he's just a horrible human being. That might be verbatim, but I think the person is anybody who writes some kind of line taking a jab at somebody who's battling cancer. That is not cool. That is a horrible thing to say. And what kind of person would literally say that? It's horrible. I mean, there's people that, of course, have made the joke about, oh, this person's injured, so he's going to have to battle me with one arm or hop on one leg and blah, blah, blah. At least, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it does show the kind of environment that WWE is, and that it can be very hostile. That's just horrible. So we get to the point where Dean Ambrose is finishing up his contract, and he's definitely talking about everything that's going on. He actually went to Vince McMahon and he said, I'm not interested in renewing a contract. I am done. I am just going to work my way through the contract, and that'll be it. As soon as that's over, that'll be it. So it was kind of one of those situations where you hear that, and it's like, oh, okay. So what does WWE do in kind of response to this? Well, they did, I think it was a little bit after that, they did a press release saying that Dean Ambrose is not going to be renewing his contract, which was weird because some other people, of course, they have the whole, this person's been released, best of luck in future endeavors. It's really short and very small, but they did this press release where it's like, oh, there's no issues between the two companies, and there's no problems, and we hope to see Dean Ambrose in the future again. And what do they do after this whole release deal is out? They had him job out to EC3 in a matter of, I believe it was 2 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. They had him basically get beaten up by Nia Jax. And it's just one of those things where Dean kind of notices it. He's just kind of like, well, hold on. So I'm announcing to you guys that I am getting released, but you're having me lose to EC3. You're having me job out to Nia Jax. What the hell is up with this? And they're just like, it's going to be like a great crossover deal. It's going to be for entertainment value. It's going to be just something that makes things more interesting in the world of WWE. And, he was more than willing to work with Nia Jax. I think that he and Nia were actually on the same page. They were really good with each other. But it's one of those situations where Dean does kind of notice, it's like, so I'm not playing ball with you, and you're going to treat me like this as a way of saying thank you for all your years of service. That was just one of those things where it was heartbreaking because Dean Ambrose gave so much. He delivered so many great matches in WWE, and they just are childishly deciding, well, if you're not going to play ball with us, we're just going to take the ball and we're going to make sure you lose all the time. You're going to play checkers. Well, you got to skip your turn and you're going to have to lose and blah, 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 blah. It's absolutely frustrating to see that because it does boil down to the fact that it does include an old man who is very out of touch with the product, and that we have people that are just so childish and so disrespectful that they just decide, you don't deserve this. We're just going to have you, we're just going to have you lose to this, and we're going to have you get beaten up by this person and blah blah blah, everything like that. The ultimate insult from this entire deal was the show that Dean Ambrose had with Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns. They had that final Shield farewell matchup. It was a house show, and it was even a network special. Here's where it got to be really insulting, and I'm absolutely just disgusted by WWE for doing this. Guess how much they paid Dean Ambrose after that show? $500, not $1,000, $500. And that's something that they've admitted. They said, you don't get booked on the show. Well, here's $500 for at least showing up. You don't, and they even said that their match, that Jericho and Dean, they actually had a matchup. I think it was in a house show, if I'm not mistaken. And they got paid $750, and Chris Jericho made some kind of remark where it's like, almost like, oh, just take your $750 and shove it or something like that. Or he could do something more with the $750. Something along those lines. But it was one of those situations where you look at that and it's like, wow, that's like the ultimate slap to the face. You have you have Dean Ambrose, again, a guy who literally has busted his ass and who has literally been giving you everything that he could possibly give you. And what do? As a way of saying thank you, you just give him $500. Wow. I mean, it's like you work with a company for so long. Let's say like a big major company. I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to piss anybody off. But it's a major company name, and of course they have to shut down places. They give a severance pay. You work for 25 years at a company, and you've given everything you have. You have people say like, oh, he's a great worker. Management says, oh, they're really wonderful. And the corporate offices just decide, okay, so we're going to give you a severance pay for this. And you're thinking, okay, this is going to be nice. This is going to be cool. They give you for 25 years, they give you $2,500. Just that much. Which a lot of people might say, well, that's quite a bit. It's like, no, for 25 years, that's bull. That is complete bull. You work 25 years and you only get $2,500. I would expect more. That's how it probably felt like for Dean Ambrose. It's like, hey, I put in so much time here. I put in so much heart into this company. People have said nice things about me. He definitely has voiced his opinion. And that's one of the things that also pisses me off, which I'll talk about in a minute. But for him to give so much to the company that he only got paid $500 on his way out, that's just like, wow, you really have no compassion for WWE, for him, do you, WWE? One of the things that's funny is that they kind of play this whole deal like somehow Vince McMahon is making it seem like, he's not the bad guy. And I believe that because that's kind of something that Vince did with CM Punk, where, he talks about, oh, well, we're family. We care about each other. He tries to play the same thing with Dean Ambrose, where he just says, oh, you didn't want to say this. You didn't want to say this line. Well, I wish you would have told me. I would have definitely not made sure. I would make sure that you didn't say that line. And now it's kind of like oh, so now that he's leaving, you're making it seem like, oh, well, you're not being communicative. We would have changed it for you. We would have done so much for you. You make it seem like, oh, well, we're sorry. We wish you would have told us. That would have been so much better. But unfortunately, you didn't tell us, so therefore you don't, we can't do anything. It's like, yeah, you could have listened. You could have listened, and then you could have changed it. You could have done these things, but instead you decided, oh, well, because this is more entertaining. This fits your character. This makes you relatable. Instead of that bullshit, you could have actually listened. It's just absolutely mind-boggling just to hear that. He also talked about his how he created the Moxley video that went viral all over the place, and that people loved it, and they were just enjoying it. They were having just a great time with it. People were loving it. He talks about how he met a guy that did like little movies, and he called him up and he saw what he did, and he said, "You're hired." It was like an immediate deal. It was a really good friend of his, and they went and they created this really great movie video that we saw. So you kind of saw that, and it's like, oh wow, this is actually kind of nice. So you have that, and he wanted to make sure that it was immediately after he got released, that he released that video. And of course, it went viral. A lot of people really enjoyed it. Another thing that is kind of cool was that during this time, WWE was trying to get in contact with him. They were basically like saying, hey, we want to see if you'd be interested in doing an extension with us and being able to, extend your contract. And Dean was just saying, well, I'm kind of in the middle of a project right now. So I think that they filmed, it seemed like they assumed that, oh, well, he was filming for like a movie or something like that, which he wasn't lying, to be fair. He was working on a project, so it was one of those situations where he was kind of half-assing the truth, but in one of the best ways possible. And yeah, he has ever since then joined AEW, had that great moment where he did the dirty deeds to everybody, such as Dean Ambrose, Kenny Omega, the referee, did that. And it ends on a really nice note, because one of the things that he says is, do what makes you happy. He brings in the whole Hermie elf from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He basically does indeed use that metaphor. It's an elf he was an elf who wanted to be a dentist. So, if you would love being a dentist, be a dentist. It was just one of those things where he was very nice about it. It was really cool to hear that. And they ended the show with that scene of, Hermie talking about, oh, I want to be a dentist, and he's being talked down by, the head elf, and it's so funny. So definitely, you guys, if you get a chance, go listen to the Jon Moxley interview on Talk is Jericho. It tells you a lot of what the creative backstage deal is with WWE. It talks a little bit about how, again, Vince McMahon is so out of touch and just definitely likes to stick in his ways instead of listening to others. And it goes back again, because they try to be a multi-million-dollar company. They try to have a good reputation, but they always try to find a way to change the narrative to make it seem like, oh, well, this person we're giving them what they want, but that's the reason why the ratings are dropping. It's like, no, they're dropping because you're being stupid, because you're not giving them good quality entertainment. And I had to argue with one of the co-hosts on the WrestleAddict Radio. I think it might have been even King Ricky, where literally he was definitely talking about how I think it was on the subject of how entertaining it is that WWE is doing this, and that WWE they don't need to change. They're not dealing with competition in AEW. But no, they are going to have competition with AEW, because once their TV deal hits in October, it's going to definitely change the game. No, major pun intended. So it's kind of one of those things where they also have to battle with other sporting events. They have to deal with other shows, season finales of TV shows, or huge like NBA finals and stuff like that. They have to battle with all that. But you could still find a way to create good, wholesome entertainment without doing these things that are obviously not working. You have to deliver something on the show that people want to see, instead of just giving them something that they're going to remember as crap. Give them a diamond, don't give them shit. That's the way I think that's the best way to put it. Alright guys, so let's actually go into talking about, again, I've been doing favorites for the last few weeks. we reached the number 12 spot. Now we're actually on number 11. So the number 11 favorite tag team of mine, I put in the New Day for the number 11 spot. New Day has been one of the staples of every tag team division in WWE, whether it's on Raw or on SmackDown, on pay-per-view. You look at a lot of the great matches, and they usually involve the New Day. Them versus the Bludgeon Brothers. Them versus the Usos. Them versus the Revival. You know, there's so many of these great matches, and it always starts with the New Day versus Xavier Woods, Big E Langston, and Kofi Kingston. All three of these guys have definitely given in so many great matches, and they've given in so many careers here. You look at everything that they're doing here with these, with what they're doing. Their persona kind of just started off with them just kind of being like a gospel choir, and then they just kind of embellished that, and they made it even more. Now we got Big E doing the splits, and he's just acting all sexualized. We have Xavier Woods, who is the mouthpiece of the New Day. He really is. And they have Kofi Kingston, who is the athletic one, and who's also kind of is the major star of the New Day. And proof of that is the fact that he has the WWE Championship. So it's really just one of those things where I could not overlook the New Day when it came to this list, especially when it came to great tag team wrestlers. We go into the favorite women's wrestler of this week, and this one was a pretty easy. I think this was honestly a pretty easy one, but this was also one that I've absolutely just could not overlook, to say the least. I mentioned China. China has definitely been a game changer when it comes to how people view women, especially in professional wrestling. When you look at everything that she's accomplished, she's the first and only woman to have won the Intercontinental Championship twice, I might add you. She was the only woman for years to be in the Royal Rumble matchup. She actually was in contention to be the WWE Champion. There was even talks about her becoming the champion, which would have been amazing. And honestly, the ground would have shook and everything would have just been like, wow, how did you manage to do that and have somebody like like China win the WWE title? Of course, it did leave ways for a lot of other women to get involved in the men's matchup. You know, Beth Phoenix, Nia Jax, Karma, also known as Awesome Kong. But China was definitely one of those women who, at first, was just kind of like the bodyguard for Triple H and Shawn Michaels. But after a while, she started creating a character. She started creating a presence that could not be matched. You think about some of the great things that she did for the company. I mean, my God, some of the stuff she did with Eddie Guerrero was so vastly entertaining. If you remember, they did this whole deal where they were going to do like a prom deal, and Eddie's just talking about fixing his cummerbund, and we have Eddie, and we have China just actually having a character, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like she can be an intimidating woman, but she's a person who wants to feel loved too. So it was really cool to see that. China is definitely one of those women that is so vastly underrated and has just been absolutely overlooked for so long. And I'm so glad that she got inducted into the Hall of Fame, even though we can say that it is a bunch of crap that she didn't get her individual Hall of Fame deal in. But the fact is, she's in the Hall of Fame, and that can't be taken away from her. Speaking of Hall of Fames, we go into the men's, and I had to go with a Hall of Famer himself. For the men's, I went with Edge. Edge is one of those guys that I remember seeing early on as kind of like this blandish babyface that a lot of people were just starting to hate and starting to resent. And I remember in 2004 SummerSlam seeing him in his hometown getting booed by people because they were at that point where they were just like, yeah, we're tired of this. We don't want to see Edge anymore. We don't want to see him, we don't want to see him doing what he does anymore. And that started him creating a different character that really transpired at Taboo Tuesday a few months later, where in lead up he was talking about, hey, I've never been, WWE champion. I've been bred for success to be WWE champion. I should be WWE champion. He pinned Triple H. He won the triple threat matchup between Shawn Michaels and Chris Benoit. And it seemed like, well, if they were going in the WWE direction, he would be the one to compete for the title. But the fans chose Shawn Michaels, which then put Edge over the edge. Over the edge. Jeez, that's like a double standard. Where again we do see him turning into a dastardly heel. He beat down Chris Benoit. He did everything that he could to get where he was, and he eventually was the winner of the inaugural Money in the Bank ladder match. A matchup that, if you listen to interviews, he actually refused to do. He didn't want to do it because he did so many ladder matches beforehand. But he won that. He had a feud with Matt Hardy. He went on to become the WWE champion by cashing in on John Cena. And from there, his career just really took off, whether it was doing his live sex celebration, whether he was doing his cash-ins to win the WWE or the world title, whether it was his relationship with Vicky Guerrero, which I will say, honestly, Vicky and Edge are one of the top power couples in WWE's history. You think of people like Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth. Vicky and Edge are definitely high up there, because there were so many moments where you did see Vicky do everything that she could to ensure that Edge would stay on top. And it was just really cool to see that. Edge would, find a way to weasel into the, world title picture. And even so much so that he was the world champion at the start of the night, and he ended the night with the WWE Championship, if I remember correctly. No, it's the other way around. He started with the WWE title, and he changed it into the World Heavyweight title. And I love how he used that metaphor of, you've heard of, Jesus turning water into wine, but he turns the WWE title into the world title. It was one of those things where it was actually a really cool way that he did that. He just continued to get better and better and better. And unfortunately, as a lot of people know, his career got cut short because of his nagging neck injuries. So he ended his reign his legacy, I should say, at WrestleMania 27, where he had that match with Alberto Del Rio, which was still better than what I remember it to be. But it was just one of those things where we didn't realize until after it happened that, this was his last matchup. And, he's earned that spot in the WWE Hall of Fame for everything that he's done, his contributions to the TLC matches, to the moments that he had with Christian, to every matchup that he put on definitely was something that was going to create something interesting that people were definitely going to just enjoy and never forget. So there's a reason why Edge was a part of this this list, and there's no way that I could overlook him. So much so that it actually bleeds into the favorite matchup from 2008. It happened at WrestleMania 24. The match between Undertaker and Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship. So this was the same event that hosted the triple threat match for the WWE title between Triple H, Cena, and Randy Orton. It also hosted the Instant Classic between Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels, and Edge even admitted the fact that he did not watch that matchup because he didn't want to have those nerves. He didn't want to have the situation where it was like, oh, we have to follow that. That's going to be tough. So he intentionally said, you know what, I don't need to watch that. I'm just going to focus on my matchup. I'm going to focus on this, and we're going to kind of go from there. And they still put on a hell of a matchup. The build-up to this was great because you had Undertaker win the Elimination Chamber matchup at No Way Out. And then basically what ended up happening was that they tried everything they could to make sure the Undertaker was less than 100%, even having Undertaker being pinned by Edge in a handicap matchup. It definitely was one of those situations where it's like, okay, this is a possibility that the streak could be over. And this is where, in so many people's opinions, this is where people started seeing the matches getting elevated, getting bigger. They were getting better, and they were getting to the point where it's like, oh shit, the streak might end here. Because there were a couple of moments, during the previous years, we talk about Randy Orton and Undertaker, or Batista and The Undertaker, where it was like, oh shit, this might actually happen. The streak might actually be over. This is where it really felt like, oh no, the streak might actually end. So we had a lot of really great spots in this deal, including a great reversal into the tombstone, and we saw the great moment of Chad Robinson, Little Nate, basically running from the top of the rampway of the WrestleMania 24 entryway all the way to the ring. It's still one of those things that's just so funny to this day, just seeing him just bolt all the way. And the fact that he's able to bolt down there and still have enough air to count the 1-2 kick out, which is absolutely insane. We had Edge hit the spear on The Undertaker, and we thought 1, 2, it's going to be 3. Nope, Taker kicks out. We see a second spear dealt by Edge. Edge gets locked in the triangle hold, and Edge unfortunately has to tap out to the maneuver. Undertaker wins, making his legacy continue, and he definitely earned that world title that night. It was a fantastic matchup, and they continued the story all the way until SummerSlam, actually. I was going to say Extreme Rules, where they banished The Undertaker. It's like, no, they had that Hell in the Cell matchup at SummerSlam, where Edge kind of wanted to do as much as he could to make this even a better matchup, but unfortunately that ended up not happening because creative decided to be PG and try to tone things down. So, yeah, that was a fun deal. But it was still a great matchup, and the rivalry itself was pretty good. You can't really deny the fact that it's just an absolutely fantastic matchup, and I could not overlook this one. It was the one matchup during that entire deal I just remember being so invested in. I definitely will say that Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair is definitely a close second, but it was just Edge and Undertaker were the one that really stole it for me. So that has been Pro Talk Wrestling, you guys. Thank you so much for listening in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And continue to listen on, because now that we are a part of Wrestle Addict Radio, you can definitely expect some new content, some new great ideas that will be coming up. You can honestly expect to hear from myself and Mr. Fretz next week, because we will indeed be covering a lot of great topics in wrestling, and we will honestly be having a fun time just enjoying what we can with wrestling. Not necessarily WWE wrestling, but wrestling in its entirety. So, you definitely know where to find us on Facebook. You can check us out on Twitter at RealFNGame. Give us a nice little like also on YouTube, as well as a subscribe. Go to SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Spreaker.com to listen into all the other great podcasts that we've produced throughout the years. So, with that being said, I've been NateFNGreat. Thank you so much for listening in. I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye. And just remember that I can be a lunatic as well as a game changer.